Hi, Year 12. This is Mrs. Pettigrew. I am doing this video as sort of introduction to respiration, the topic that we're going to begin next week and then carry on doing next half term. And respiration, it's not particularly complicated, but you've got to learn loads of new stuff really quickly. And you've got to know certain terms in order to understand what's happening in respiration. And it's difficult to understand what those terms are without knowing what's happening in respiration. So this is very much a topic that you will not completely understand until we have got to the end of the topic and you've been back to the beginning and gone through it all at least once. It's really a topic that you need to work on and go back to and review. So I think probably, what I've been thinking is the easiest way for me to actually do this is to be talking to you. So I'm sat in my living room, talking at my camera with the PowerPoint on the laptop screen. So it's not particularly professional. So bear with me, okay, and we'll see how this goes. So what I've done just for this week, and there's no tasks to complete this week, no task to hand in, but I do want you to do something. What I would like you to do is I would like you to start familiarizing yourself with respiration so that when you come to my PowerPoints in the next week and then next half term, you've got a little bit of understanding behind it so that the PowerPoints don't scare you off, okay? And what I'm also hoping to do starting next half term is to do sort of a little bit of video conferencing to be online so you can ask me questions. So that's going to be quite a lot of fun. But, you know, baby steps, we'll just get this video over and done with first. So what I have included with this upload onto Google Classroom are these two files. The cellular respiration poster is just a really good overview of respiration, okay? But at this point in time, it might be a little bit scary because there's lots of information on there, but it's there for you and there's some quite nice definitions at the bottom. The one on the right is a piece of work produced by a teacher called Mr. Pollock. Now, those of you in my class, you'll know about Mr. Pollock. I steal loads of his work. It's a really, really nice basic overview of what respiration is. And I really can't recommend it enough. You must read this piece of work before you dive into the videos I'm going to give you and listen to the PowerPoints that I'm going to present to you. It's really important. It will give you a really clear start. And I guarantee you, the first time you read through it, you won't understand it all. If you do, fantastic. But, you know, I've never met anybody who has yet because it's difficult, okay? It's also year 13 stuff. But baby steps, we'll get there. And every lesson that we get through, you will understand more. And at the end, when you look back, it will all come into focus, I promise you, okay? So just bear with me. Remember to message me if there's anything you don't understand. Don't sit at home going crazy. I am here by the computer every day, apart from Saturdays and Sundays, so I'm always here. Ask me questions. Okay, so new terminology, right? There's loads and loads of new terminology. There's new enzymes you've got to learn about. There's new processes that you've got to learn about. Some of them that you probably actually have heard of, but we've never really talked about them in a lot of detail. And that's basically what I'm going to do with this video, is just introduce the terminology and the molecules that you need to have a grasp of before we dive into respiration. Okay, so a little bit of chemistry here. Oxidation. Okay, so in biology, oxidation is when a molecule loses electrons. Yeah, so if a molecule loses electrons, we say it's been oxidized. Now, it's kind of like a balance in biology all the way around. So if one molecule loses an electron, then another must gain the electron. And that's called reduction. So when a molecule gains an electron from another molecule, it's reduced. Okay? And these reactions, I haven't written this down, but these reactions are called redox reactions. So where something is reduced, something else is oxidized, or vice versa. So a way to remember this what oxidation is and what reduction is this oil rig analogy. Okay, so oil rig, oxidation is loss, reduction is gain of electrons. Okay, so make sure you're really clear with these two terms. Right, so in respiration, it's all about oxidation and reduction. Without kind of going too far and scaring you, in order for ADP to be phosphorylated, you need lots of energy. And the mitochondria get the energy from glucose by moving electrons around. Okay, so this movement of electrons from one molecule to another, this oxidation of one molecule and reduction of another, is really important in respiration. Another thing that is not quite important, essential, is that when we're talking about electrons, we're actually talking about hydrogen atoms, specifically talking about hydrogen atoms. So when something is oxidized and it loses an electron, what it's effectively doing is it's losing a hydrogen atom. So the name for that process in respiration is dehydrogenation. So dehydrogenation and oxidation are the same thing. Okay, so if you get to a point where these two things are being discussed, it basically means the same thing. Okay, so the next thing we need to talk about is phosphorylation. Okay, phosphorylation, nice and easy one. Phosphorylation is just where you stick a phosphate group onto something. So it's very, very important in ADP and ATP. So in order to turn our ADP into ATP, we need to phosphorylate ADP. Okay. Conversely, when we're actually using ATP and we're releasing energy from it, what's actually happening is a dephosphorylation reaction. The ATP is losing a phosphate group. So phosphorylation is the addition of a phosphate group. Okay. And there are two types of phosphorylation. Okay, one of them is very, very simple. The other one's a little bit more difficult to understand, and it's one that you'll understand when we've got to the end of our respiration journey. So, substrate level phosphorylation, and this is what happens in the first three stages of respiration. If you notice on the first slide, I didn't introduce it very well, but there are four main stages in respiration. The first three do actually produce some ATP, and that ATP is produced by a process called substrate level phosphorylation. Okay, and that's basically just where the phosphate group is taken from one molecule and stuck onto another molecule. So we've got a donor molecule which donates a phosphate group to ADP, producing ATP. Okay, so in glycolysis and the Krebs cycle, which are two of the early stages in respiration, some ATP is produced. We have a little bit of phosphorylation happening, okay, and that's substrate level phosphorylation, where effectively the ADP steals a phosphate group from another molecule.